This time of meeting be blessed by your presence. May we who meet be blessed with your wisdom. May the communities we represent be blessed with your hope. Amen.
Amen.
You all please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next is our special recognition. I'm going to let Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Testing. Is this working? Now it's working. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we have several students and one teacher in attendance who are deserving of special recognition this evening. When I call your name, please come forward to accept your certificate. Let's start with Brian Starr. Brian, come forward. Brian is a fifth grade student at Rocky Plains Elementary, and he has earned special recognition not only for himself, but in the process, his school and our public school system. The Newton County School Nutrition Program participated in the National School Breakfast Week celebrations during March 4 through 8. The theme of the week was Be a Star with School Breakfast. As part of the celebration, students took part in the Who's Your School Breakfast Star National Essay Writing Contest. Students were asked to answer 2 questions, each in 100 words or less. First, if you could enjoy school breakfast with anyone in the world, who would it be and why? And secondly, what healthy school breakfast food would you eat with them and why? By the way, Brian chose to share his food with a homeless person. Essays were judged on 4 criteria: creativity and reasoning of why the star was chosen, the healthfulness of the school breakfast selected, adherence to the word limit, and accuracy of grammar and spelling. Brian's essay was one of only 3 national winners. His essay will be published in the National School Nutrition Magazine in November of 2013. Brian, congratulations. Next, we will recognize our 2 Governor's Honors finalists, who will now represent Newton County Schools in this prestigious state program. The Governor's Honors Program, known as GHP, is a residential summer program for gifted and talented high school juniors and seniors. A function of the Georgia Department of Education, it takes place on the campus of Valdosta State University. The 2013 program will be the 50th summer, making it the longest continually running program of its kind in the United States. More than 2,900 students from across the state were interviewed and auditioned over 3 weekends in January and February, and from those nominees, 690 finalists were chosen to participate in the 2013 program. Since the program is fully funded by the Georgia General Assembly, there is no charge for these students to attend. During the 4 weeks of the program, students spend the morning in their major area of nomination, exploring topics not usually found in the regular high school classroom. During the afternoons, students choose one of the other areas in which to study. The curriculum in all the areas is challenging and engaging. Evenings are filled with seminars, activities, concerts, and performances. I might want to go. That sounds really good. Over 30 Newton County School System students were nominated for GHP, and 2 made the final cut. First, I'd like to ask William Dobar to come forward. William? William is a junior at Alcobie High School, and he has chosen communicative arts as his major for Governor's honors because he feels it is best to fit to help him in his lofty career goals. Ms. Vineyard, I think you kind of confused the words there. During GHP, he plans on possibly minoring in social studies. William, congratulations, sir. That's fabulous. Really well done. Next, I'd like to ask Samuel Potts to come forward. Eastside junior Sam Potts will major in music voice tenor during his 4-week stay at Governor's Honors. Sam indicated that music has been one of his biggest interests since he began singing at church at an early age. He caught the music bug and has been singing ever since. Like William, he most likely will minor in social studies at Governor's Honors. Congratulations, Sam. Next, we will recognize some Eastside High School students who won big at the recent Georgia FBLA competition. They include 3 state champions and 1 runner-up, and all 4 of the students will now represent Newton County Schools at the National FBLA competition in Anaheim, California this summer. Last year, 2 of these same students, Dustin Gentis and Connor Haler, won 2nd place in the nation for their project. First, I'd like to call on Dustin Gentis to come forward. Dustin? Dustin won 2nd place in the digital design and promotion competition. In that competition, Dustin had to be an ad agency that created a marketing campaign for a fictitious extreme adventure company giving tours in the Southwest. He had to create the company logo, billboard, letterhead, coupon, newspaper ad, etc., and then present his ideas to a panel of judges. He will follow the same process in Anaheim. In addition to his 2nd place win, Dustin was named the Region 14 Who's Who in FBLA. Dustin, congratulations, sir. Next, I'd like to ask Kaysen Cantrell to come forward. Kaysen had the highest score in the state of Georgia on the online banking and financial systems test. That's worth a round of applause. The best in the state. This qualifies him as a member of the Georgia Super Team for nationals. Kaysen's event will be an online test and a case study pertaining to current banking and financial issues. He will present his solution to the case study in front of a panel of judges. Kaysen, congratulations, sir. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask Connor Haler and Elena Freeman to come forward. Connor and Elena teamed up to win 1st place in the digital video production competition. The duo created a video promoting FBLA PBL Week. Not only was the video judged, but Connor and Elena also had to explain how they created, produced, and edited the video in front of the judging panel. They will have to follow the same process at nationals. Congratulations, Connor and Elena. Finally, I'd like to call up Miss Marilou Grimes. Miss Grimes? Miss Grimes is the FBLA advisor at Eastside High School, and this is the 2nd year in a row she has taken students to nationals. In the process, she has been named this year's Region 14 Advisor of the Year. Miss Grimes, congratulations, and thank you for what you did. That's it. You make us very proud. Thank you very much. Madam Chair, while we're on the notion of achievement, as you know, as board members know, the Georgia Department of Education announced the 4-year cohort graduation rate for 2012 for Georgia's public schools today. It has to do with students who start in the 9th grade and finish in the 12th grade as a graduate of their respective high school. So it's a 4-year cohort graduation rate, quite strenuous. And I'm pleased to say that Newton County improved at Alcovey High School by 9.53% over the previous 4-year cohort. That Eastside improved by 16.27% in their graduation cohort rate. That Newton High improved by 16.69%. Overall, the Newton County schools improved by 12.07% over the prior 4-year cohort, which is higher than the state of Georgia and higher than most of our surrounding school systems. So congratulations, students, teachers, principals, Board of Education. That's excellent. That's excellent. So that concludes the recognitions tonight.
We have the Education
Foundation, right.
That's next. Come on up. Where is she? Shannon Davis. Shannon, come on.
Thank you so much. Do I need to bring this down, or can y'all hear me okay? Okay. Good evening. Good to see you all again after a little hiatus on my end. I'm Shannon Davis, and I'm here representing the Newton Education Foundation tonight and our Board of Trustees. If I could take just a second and recognize a few board members I think that are here. Miss Jamie Berry, Angela Ellis, and I see Miss Tammy Camfield that came in. Do I have any other board members here to recognize? Thank y'all for being here. I appreciate it. In just a minute, I'm going to ask them to come up for our pictures with our teachers. So as most of you know, the foundation is a local independent nonprofit raising private funds for public educators here in Newton County, specifically for Newton County educators. Last cycle, we had about 22 applicants in the winter, and we had 25 applicants this go-round. All were extremely impressive. I think Ms. Berry was on our grant committee and said that it was so hard to choose the ones that we did. Normally, we have three winners. This year, we were able to choose 4. We had a extra fundraiser this year, the Pancake Stampede 5K Run, and we raised some extra dollars, so we were able to throw in an extra one this year. So at this time, I'd like to recognize the teachers and then ask their principals to come up with them. And while we don't do certificates, they've gotten their little packets, except for Miss Hudgens, I believe, and then we'll take a photo op if that's all right. Okay. So our winners this year were Mr. Jeff Johnson with Oak Hill Elementary, and representing the principal, Dr. Gammons, for math, music, and movies. Miss Lori McGovern from Indian Creek Middle School, and Dr. Mallard, representing principal, for bringing the 21st century library to life. And then Miss Kimberly Patillo, there she is, with Newton College and Career Academy for biotechnology, bacterial transformation, and Dr. Woodard with her. And then our last one is Miss Keena Hudgens from Newton County Theme School, and with Mr. Meneguzzo for Math in My World. Congratulations to all of you. This was a wonderful panel that we had this year out of the applicants, so we are thrilled with this. So if I could ask my board members to come up and we'll take a photo real quick, if that's okay. If we can take just a second.
You just stand down there.
Okay.
Front, back. That's where you get shut off.
Thank you, and congratulations, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Thank you, board.
All right, I don't believe we have any public participation, so we will move on. We need to approve the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
I make a motion to amend the agenda to hear the superintendent-elect's proposed organizational structure effective July 1.
All right, do we have a second?
I second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? No. All right, so our agenda has been amended. We can,
Place her wherever you wish.
Ms. Fury, I'll place you as the new letter B under new business. All right, approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now we move on to our superintendent's reports. Operations.
I don't believe we have anything to add, do we, Peggy, in finance or operations?
I have the information about the
Yes.
Please come forward to the mic.
Just the information requested about the new vehicle tax through April, we collected $259,892. And that's it.
Thank you.
Mike or Jan, anything to add to the operations report?
Just in follow-up, there was a question last week about the sign at Newton High School. A purchase order, I believe, will be issued for that this week, next couple of days, and it will take approximately 4 weeks to install. Secondly, there was a request from the board regarding the naming of the section of the roadway at the new Newton High School, the roadway that connects Kroll Road North with Jack Neely Road. And as of Monday, that is now officially a private drive designated as Ram Way. And the address of the school will now be 1 Ram Way, Covington, Georgia, 30014.
Good, thank you for
That's it.
following up on that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moore, I got one question for you. What are we going to do with the mistake that's piled up on the right side of the school? Normally called the dirt mound.
They're actually doing a project on Kroll Road, and they're going to be removing some of that dirt. The county's going to be using some of that to bring that hill down.
Bring the hill down. Are we charging them for that dirt?
We are not. We're just pleased to bring the hill down.
No, I'm dead serious. Why not?
I don't know, we can go back and ask them, but we've told them that they could have it, just remove the dirt.
Go
from
back
it.
and ask them, but this is school property, and we're selling land.
Right.
And I just don't think we can give away. And I'm serious. Why are we giving it away?
We were pleased to have a place to move it to at the time, because we wanted to bring that hill down, but we had nowhere to move it to.
Okay, but I'm disappointed in that.
So they were helping us, it was one party helping the other.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing.
Thank you.
All right, yes, sir.
All right. We need to have a vote on approval of the operations report. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, so it's approved. Let's move on to curriculum and instruction. We have 2 presentations.
Anything to add to the previous report from the other evening?
No, sir. No, Madam Chair, there's nothing to add to the curriculum and instruction technology report.
Let's find the right PowerPoint. I think we have it. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I would ordinarily not take your time tonight to share a PowerPoint with you. But the content of this presentation is so important and has such manifest, powerful implications for Georgia's public schools that I do not want to exit Newton County without bringing this to your attention. So the good news is I'm not going to read you every word that's on this PowerPoint. I'm not going to pretend to do that. You will see that it was presented recently at Griffin RISA to area superintendents. And it was so presented by the Deputy Superintendent for Race to the Top. That's the actual title of Dr. Susan Andrews. Now, Dr. Andrews is in a very unique position in that not only did State Superintendent Barge have to nominate her for said position, but the governor also had to approve of her placement. So she is, Dr. Susan Andrews, a former Muskogee County Superintendent, is the state's Deputy Superintendent for Race to the Top. That's her title. And she made this presentation to us that I bring to you tonight in at least partial form, but I'm going to try to make some key points. So it's not unimportant to remember that Race to the Top was a competitive grant out of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009. 11 states, including Georgia and D.C., received the grant. Georgia's award was $400 million. That's an important figure to remember because it's going to compel us as public school people in Georgia to do some things that you will hear tonight and that will actually begin even in the coming school year. So how might Georgia spend its Race to the Top monies? They took the $400 million and they divided it in 2. The first $200 million they're spending for implementation of Common Core state standards, which we started this year. They did all kinds of webinars and presentations around the state of Georgia, probably with varying degrees of success, they would admit. They seek to develop a teacher and leader effectiveness system. We will have a new teacher and school-based administrator evaluation system. In fact, Newton County will enter that new system in the coming 13-14 school year. There is a lot of intense training that has to occur for both teachers and school-based administrators for these two systems to take place. And as such, we had a choice of having to fund that training ourselves as we started 14-15, or rely on the money the state has reserved for 13-14 to get the training done for everyone. In conferring with Superintendent-elect Fury, I concurred with her that Newton needed to begin in 13-14 because it's a huge money savings for us. Plus, we get to hear, paid for by Race to the Top funds, the state's preeminent experts in these two evaluation systems be our resources, and some of them are trainers for 13-14. So rather than try to make up stuff on something as critical as this, which also impacts people's employment, we decided to go with this in 13-14 and get the state-funded training. Also, a longitudinal data system is a third objective of the state in securing this grant, trying to show over a long period of time how kids perform, how classes perform, how teachers perform, and so on and so forth. A longitudinal data system funded in part by this grant. And the new CCRPI that was just released a couple of weeks ago is a part of that longitudinal data system. Early learning initiatives with an emphasis on pre-K. I cannot tell you a whole lot about that particular one. I don't know a whole lot about it. Dr. Andrews didn't say a whole lot about it. So that tells you that as all of these things are before us, you'll see it evolve over the next several years in terms of Georgia's educational emphasis. Certification revisions, they're going to do some revising of the various certificates that school personnel can achieve in Georgia. And again, I'm not here to go through those specifics tonight, but I want you to just know those general things to give you an overall sense tonight of where this may be going. $200 million for district-wide projects. We were not one of the districts in Georgia that secured these monies. We really wanted others to do the experimenting for us, and frankly, given our emphasis on student achievement and our intensity with what we've been doing in our initiatives, I think that was the right decision for us not to be a part of that, because I think we now see results that we all can be very hopeful as to the future. That $200 million in school districts like Rockdale, for example, our neighbor, which did secure part of this grant, trained teachers to implement Common Core state standards. They used monies to help improve their use of data to improve student achievement. I'm not sure exactly what those different districts have done. It's probably showing up some in the longitudinal data system and some of the CCRPI stuff we just seen 2 weeks ago. Training for teacher and leader keys. They've been training and implementing teacher and leader keys throughout these several Georgia school systems who received Race to the Top. Now, this caveat, especially from someone who's leaving, I would say it anyway, but as I leave, I really have no shyness about it. You may have read in the AJC where the results from the pilot in the Race to the Top Georgia school systems related to teacher keys, the teacher evaluation system, that it did not discriminate sufficiently between what is now the current system of teacher evaluation and what is the proposed new one. And some, including some legislators, were questioning whether or not this new teacher evaluation system was going to be all that it was intended to be. That said, Georgia is still moving forward with teacher keys and leader keys in terms of the evaluation systems. And again, we enter it in 13-14. By the way, you have to enter it in 14-15. Everybody has not a choice as to 14-15. And then she shared the various partners. So you need to know who's the driving force behind Race to the Top in Georgia that now impacts us. The governor, the governor's office of planning, I'm not going to read all those things to you. Just take a quick look at them. You can see all the folks influencing the work for Race to the Top, including 26, that's the number, 26 local Georgia school systems. That's where they're located. That's simply a map of where the 26 are located throughout the state. And there are the 4 major initiatives: standards and assessments, data systems to support instruction, CCRPI, for example, great teacher and leaders, the new evaluation systems geared towards producing great teachers and leaders. That's the aim, turning around lowest achieving schools. Under standards and assessments, again, not reading this whole PowerPoint, and you don't want me to. I wouldn't either if I was sitting here. I wouldn't want to have every word read to me, but let me focus on some things. Look at the second dot. Developing and implementing common high-quality assessments through the PARC partnership. You've heard us mention, or you've seen us write about the PARC partnership, where Georgia is in the PARC consortium, and I cannot recollect it as I stand here what PARC stands for. But that said, it's a group of educators and other academicians and some psychometricians who are putting together the new test for the Common Core state standards, which heretofore they have said would take place, the new test would take place in 14-15, and connected to this much more rigorous Common Core state standards that we know about and that we implemented this year across the state. So we're a part of the PARC consortium, and I believe that consists of some 20-plus states throughout the United States. Directly put, we should be able to compare Mrs. Jones' second grades or third grade results, let's say, in Georgia to Mrs. Smith's third grade reports in, say, Louisiana, who's also in the PARC consortium. Apples to apples. Mrs. Jones to Mr. Smith or whoever might be teaching third grade in mathematics in Louisiana. Apples to apples comparison, same test that they're to take. Unless that changes, that's the intent of the Common Core and the assessments related to it. You'd be able to compare Rocky Plains Elementary School to not just any elementary school in Georgia, but to any elementary school in the PARC consortium, 20-plus states. Apples to apples, first time ever in the history of the country on a criterion reference test like this. You'd be able to compare your middle schools the same way, high schools the same way, and so you're getting down to classroom, school to school, school system to school system, state to state, for the first time in the history of the nation, on tests such as these. Then other aims are, as you see there, look at that fourth dot. I have to give Superintendent-elect Fury a lot of credit on this one. James Woodard knows been a part of, if not other principals in the school system, in putting together a STEM initiative. So real quick, Sam, stand up and tell us what that's going to look like, or come here and do it quickly, because I don't want to take too much of your time.
If I recall, we did a presentation. Mr. Woodard led a mini presentation about the STEM Institute, but it will be housed at Newton College and Career Academy in the 9th grade wing of the old Newton High School building. And we have identified 55 rising 9th grade students who have gone through an application process to participate in the STEM Institute. We've generated a great deal of interest, roughly about over 200 people attended a meeting about the STEM Institute, and they will focus on rigorous science, technology, engineering, and mathematics courses linked to pathways that are offered at the College and Career Academy.
And that certainly is in sync with where the state is headed in terms of that science, technology, engineering, mathematics emphasis. The longitudinal data system, I'm not going to go through all of that. That's just some of the bullets under it. Ultimately, you'll have things as germane as class schedules and rosters to be able to discern through the longitudinal data system in Georgia. That's really quite unique, I would say. The course standards, of course, student profiles, I don't know to what degree you'd be able to see that in terms of any personal data. I doubt that's possible under federal law. Some student attendance history by school and school districts, and so on and so forth. you've seen that as the part of the new longitudinal data system. The dashboard is what your administrators and teachers are looking at now in terms of the CCRPI released 2 weeks ago. And it tells them, the yellow is kind of, in the middle of of doing well and not so well. The red says you got a problem, kids are failing, and the green means, you're good. So that's just a sample from her presentation. So they've color-coded, good, bad, not so great, or whatever. And that's the same thing on core standards. I'm not reading all this to you. On the lowest achieving schools, they have an Office of School Turnaround in the Georgia Department of Ed under Race to the Top. It's to provide concentrated resources and expertise to priority schools. Identifies this lowest achieving, of which we have none in Newton County. The former, or the current, Challenge Charter Academy was one of the priority schools, and it's being dissolved at the end of the school year. Each school, with the assistance of the department, has selected one of 4 research-based reform models, and I will be interested to know what those 4 reform models are. I can't espouse those here this evening, nor did Susan Andrews spend much time on that when she was with us at Griffin Reset, but that's something for you to look forward. If you ever get a school in trouble into the priority school category, the state's saying there's 4 different paradigms from which to choose to improve the school. So you'll be learning that. I bet you hear about it at GSBA this summer. And talks more about the school turnaround office. I'm not going to go into that except to saying that they monitor school improvement initiatives and short-term action plans. So it's sort of ongoing monitoring of schools in trouble. Now here's the great teachers and great leaders of the new evaluation part. They have piloted, I mentioned that earlier. They're going to have a quantitative measure of value added to student achievement. You probably heard a lot about value added. What kind of academic value does Ms. Jones add to her 3rd grade class throughout the course of the year? That sounds like pre-test, post-test to me, if you're going to determine what kind of value addedness there is. Standards for teachers and leaders that will be rated on a rubric. Here's how they're going to be scored: exemplary, proficient, needs development, or ineffective. So that's how your teachers and principals will be scored on the new evaluation instruments. It will include student surveys for teachers and faculty, staff surveys for leaders. Put directly, students in grades 3 through 12 will fill out a survey on their teacher as to their performance from the standpoint of the 3rd grader all the way through the 12th grader. Additionally, faculty will score their principal, if not their assistant principals. Not sure about the assistant principals. I do recall Dr. Andrews very clear about that. Faculty will be given a survey, and they will score their principals. Now, there is some confusion, at least among area superintendents where I met recently, as to whether or not those surveys, either one of them, will be an official part of the principal's evaluation. In other words, part of the point system that goes into computing or calculating the final score for the teacher or the principal. I think the last time we met, which was last week, a number of my fellow superintendents thought the surveys would be made known to the teacher and to the principal, but would not be a calculated part of the final evaluation. I cannot attest to that tonight. I can only tell you the surveys are going to happen. Dr. Andrews was clear about that. Whether it's a formal part of the calculated score per teacher or principal, I can't say tonight. So heads up, you can be looking towards what are they going to do with that. And then another point of discussion that we're not sure about, and Dr. Andrews wasn't clear about it either, that I recall anyway, is whether or not that would be public. Whether or not the student's rendition of the teacher's public, or the teacher's rendition of the principal public. Don't know. We kind of think not. We think it's going to be for their own edification, if you will, and their own self-improvement, but that's another issue to be heads up about. Pay for performance for teachers using Race to the Top funds. I don't think there will be a lot of monies available to do merit pay. That's what that is. I don't think there'll be lots of monies available to do that. I do think, judging the General Assembly, that there will be some real strong feelings that Georgia should try to make that happen. Merit pay or pay for performance. Whether they can actually come up with the monies remains to be seen. Some of my colleagues think not. Some think that the General Assembly will find a way. I'm not sure the monies are there myself, but that's something for you to to watch. I want to back up one dot back to the surveys and give you one retiring superintendent's opinion for what it's worth. When faculty and staff survey their leaders, especially if it is a calculated part of their evaluation, I have some reservation about that. Not everybody agrees with me. But my reservation is I've seen principals do absolutely the right things in their schools and lead for learning and get really good results over a long period of time, 3-4 years, successively, and yet faculty not feel so good about them and actually rate the principal not very high. So I personally would try to take myself back a bit and really think globally about a survey of principals and what that means or doesn't mean. And I always want to look at how well the school performs, the children there. How well do the children perform at the school? And I've known principals not very popular, but very good at getting results for kids. So that's a reservation I'll leave with you. I'd have the same kind of reservation in terms of kids' surveys of teachers. I remember Mrs. Anthony in 6th grade. I couldn't stand Mrs. Anthony. If you'd have given me a survey, I'd have really wrote her up. But looking back on it, she was a great teacher. She taught me how to write a little bit. And I didn't like her because of the way she made us write. And I was in the 6th grade, and I just moaned and groaned to no end. Just step back and take a big picture look at all this. Okay, here's the chart. And this is teacher leaders. This is a teacher evaluation. It will actually generate, here we go, it will generate a teacher effectiveness measure for every teacher in our school system. There will be surveys of instructional practices, grades 3 through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12. We'll fill out a survey on their teachers' practices. Teacher assessment on performance standards will also be done through observations and documentations of the observations of teacher performance. I'm going to pause here just for a moment. When Dr. Andrews was with us, I pointed out to her that we were going to implement the ViewPath Safe system, the camera system in our schools in the coming year in secondary schools. We are told, and Dr. Andrews did not negate or deny the following. We've been told by some of the folks in the Race to the Top pilots school systems in Georgia that is a very intense, laborious evaluation process. And so I raised with her on behalf of the Newton County Schools, would we be able to have our teachers volunteer only if they chose? They don't have to do it. But if I were a teacher, could I choose to give them a lesson or two by way of video? And thus my principal or assistant principals could view my performance by way of video with the 360 cameras. You see everything with the cameras we're installing. Could I have my principal evaluate me that way? And then bring me in, show me his evaluation or hers, and go through it and watch me actually perform it. A principal could do that on Sundays or on Saturdays or before school or after school, watching the video, making the careful notes, really taking their time to evaluate teachers by way of video. That stumped her, so to speak, but then she proceeded to tell me the research I knew about, which is, in Harvard's done the latest research, which pitted teachers being evaluated by someone present in the room versus the evaluator doing it by way of video. And there was no difference between the evaluations done either way. So the video observance was as effective as being on the spot. And I can see that given the intensity with which that would have to happen, and with the teacher and principal sitting down literally together, watching and replaying, if need be, over and over what is happening in the classroom. She said she would take it to the state. She would let us know whether that would be an acceptable choice for our teachers, not a mandate. If Mrs. Smith doesn't want it that way, that's fine. Because when we proffered ViewPath Safe, we said it would not be for evaluatory purposes. And I believe we should stay to that reasoning and to that commitment. But I'm just telling you, that's out there, and there's research on the topic that says it can be done that way. For example, I don't know a thing about trigonometry. I cannot speak Spanish or Latin. I used to speak some Latin, But I might have to bring someone in with me to view a video who knows that topic. I know a good lesson, but I don't know the content. The teacher might be teaching trigonometry that would just greatly fool me, even though I thought the structure of the lesson was good. So this has great potential, in short. Okay, student growth and academic achievement. This is very important to understand. It's going to happen in the coming year here. You got teachers of tested subjects. They will actually ultimately get a student growth percentile, however the state's going to calculate that. I can't do it for you tonight. They're going to get an achievement gap reduction. How are they reducing the subgroup achievement? In other words, between majority, minority, those kinds of elements that the state looks at. And the teacher's going to be scored on both accounts. So they need to have kids grow in terms of the learning, and they need to close the achievement gaps. That's in the tested subjects, what the state of Georgia tests. Now, there are teachers of business education and art, music, and PE that are not over here, of course. They're over here. The district must develop what they call student learning objectives for the art teachers, the business ed teachers, all the elective teachers that you could mention. And the kicker is the district not only has to develop these student learning objectives for the non-tested subject teachers, it has to be DOE approved. The state has to approve it. Now, Dr. Andrews pointed out that there's a lot of work that's been done already in this area that we certainly may want to gain from the work that has been done, maybe not having to reinvent the wheel. I would hope our neighbor Rockdale even would share with us probably their district developed student learning objectives, or at least consult with us about how that worked out there and what we should do and not do. But you should know that that's a must. So that's part of what's coming down the pike. And that's a big chore, just in and of itself. Okay, there's the pilot I mentioned already, 12, 13, I'm not going to go through all of that. 13, 14, including teacher keys, including student surveys, value-added impact will generate a teacher effectiveness measure they'll call TIM, which will be used to make human resources decisions. They intend student learning to drive teacher and principal evaluation in Georgia, by the way, to the tune of 50% of the respective entities' evaluation. 50% of the principal's evaluation and of the teacher's evaluation is student learning, student performance. Now, we've kind of laid the groundwork because our current principal's evaluation that was approved when I became superintendent here, it was 40% of the evaluation. Now it's 50 under the state's thing. 1450, fully implemented race to the top districts to include pay for performance. That's where they want to start that apparently in 1415 with those 26 districts, and there's discussion to do it broader than that. It would be a matter of dollars, I'm sure. Then you get, here's the principles, here's the chart. I'm going to send you this PowerPoint so you can look at it at home, you can refer to it later, because this is something that if you're a governor of the school system, which you govern the school system, you need to know these things. And so here's the principles evaluation. Governance and leadership. I mentioned the climate survey that teachers will do. They'll look at student attendance and retention of effective teachers. In other words, they're going to quantify who's effective in the buildings and who's not. And they're going to look to what degree effective principals retain those people in their positions, in their schools. Furthermore, over here, you've got leader assessment on performance standards. They've got performance goal setting to do in their evaluation, and then documentation of their practice. It will be Superintendent-elect Fury and whoever else she designates that will do this evaluation, observation, documentation of principles under the law here. Then you will find, under regulation, Georgia regulation, student growth and academic achievement. Here's what the principal's going to be looked at: student growth percentile for his school, achievement gap reduction for his school or hers, DOE approved student learning objectives, how that's going, and utilizing district identified growth measures. All that's going to be a part of the leader keys, the principal evaluation system in Georgia, which will generate a leader effectiveness measure score. I think you can see this significantly changes the game for many Georgia school systems, and I think here as well. I'm not going to read all that to you. You don't want me to. You can read it on your own. That's just the major aims of the race to the top and some things that come underneath. I'm not going to go through that. There's the initiatives once again where she's repeating them. She's not letting you forget. That's the 4 major aims of Georgia public education. Here's points to remember. Race to the Top is a funding source for Georgia's comprehensive education initiatives. They point out it's Georgia's plan. The feds gave them the money, yeah, but it's Georgia's plan to improve public schools is the aim here. After the funding source is depleted, $400 million, the initiatives must be sustained. Georgia has no choice. Under the law under which they took the money of Race to the Top, Georgia must continue the initiatives that you've seen, those 4 major areas that I've laid out several times here. It must be sustained. I can't tell you for how long. I mean, is it forever? I doubt that practically, but for some period of time, I'm sure. And it's probably in the grant that was received. That's probably an answerable question. Many state partners, okay. Race to the Top grants have allowed Georgia to develop, pilot, implement, okay. We've got all that. Goes for sustainability, there they are. And again, those are redundant. Those are the things they want to sustain. They want to carry forward year after year after year in Georgia for the foreseeable future. Those things right there. I think we stand in pretty good stead regarding all of them. We certainly have laid the groundwork for each of those here. Here's the next steps according to the Georgia Department of Ed. To develop a sustainability plan. They've got to develop a plan to say how they're going to carry this forward for some number of years. And I think that's probably a determinable amount. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 10, but for some number of years to come. Provide parameters as Race to the Top districts on developing a merit pay plan. Oh, that's one you should take note of. They're saying Georgia will establish parameters for merit pay, of which you will be a part if they do that and fund it. Develop an agenda for 2013 Race to the Top Summit coming up at Summer Gale. If you register for both, she points out, blah, 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 blah. But they're gearing up in Georgia to start rolling all of this out at the various professional conferences this summer, which I bet you're inundated with in Savannah when you as the board and Superintendent Fury-elect go there. This is what you're going to hear. And then she said, did we have any questions? Well, we had a lot of questions. She had some answers, not complete answers, but I just felt it was incumbent upon me to give you a sense before I exit as to where Georgia education is going in some significant ways, as I think you just saw. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews.
Take so much time.
Next, we have Ms. Fury, presentation of the strategic plan.
I have a packet, may I? As you know, we have been studying and have studied Mike Schmoker's work, Less is More. And so what we have done with our strategic plan is taken Dr. Matthews' strategic framework and laid it out in a way that captures all of our district initiatives and the things that we are paying attention to and clearly articulate how we will measure those areas. And so I'm going to take you through the packet so you can see how it lays out. And if you can think of it in terms of a triangle, with the top document, the 2-page document, which is really just front and back, and in here it lays out like this, as the point at the top of the triangle. It's the most concise document about what is to follow. So this is the document that we are all accustomed to, that I imagine if you went into our schools and asked them what our strategic framework was, they could recant this particular document. So how does that lay out in a strategic plan? So we took, and when I say we, I'm talking Mr. Peck and I sat down and laid all of this out, and then we presented it to different groups of folks to provide feedback and information to add to or to take away from the plan. I believe Sherry actually posted it online for public participation, and we will gather that information as well, wherever necessary, make adjustments. And so tonight we're presenting the draft version, so you may have suggestions and recommendations as well. And if you'll look on page 1 You'll see our system non-negotiable goals and strategies. So the first two are our non-negotiable goals: increased student achievement, more effective teaching, and then beneath those, A and B, would be our strategies, and then followed by technology integration, which was a strategy, as well as use of highly effective professional learning communities. And we were trying to think of a way to capture each of these areas, and so you'll notice that it says academic excellence. So we're focusing on that general area and addressing non-negotiable goal and strategy number one. Actually, it's the goal. And prepare all students to be college and or career ready with a supportive, engaging, student-centered learning environment that ensures continuous improvement through the use of research-based instructional strategies. And then we lay out objectives for you, and we list them A through K. And then beneath that, we identify key initiatives that we have undertaken or will undertake to address those objectives. And while I don't think you want me to read them to you, you can take this away and read over it and provide feedback along the way. I wanted to just show you how it's laid out so you can go back and forth between to see how every piece goes together. So when you turn the page and you look on page 3, you'll see at the very top the bolded area moves down to area 2. And so we're addressing more effective teaching via research-based instructional strategies and building background knowledge. And if you'll notice, the broad category changes from academic excellence to instructional excellence, and we begin to look at what instruction looks like in the system. Same layout, non-negotiable goal number 2, the objectives that we have identified, and then key initiatives that we have undertaken or will undertake in the future to address those key objectives. Flipping through to page 5, you'll note technology integration, so we've dropped down from number 2 to number 3, and under instructional excellence still, to integrate technology, listing the objectives and key initiatives. And if you'll turn to page 6, you will see we have moved down to item number 4 at the top, use of highly effective professional learning communities, and the broad category changes from instructional excellence to a culture of excellence. And we identify our non-negotiable goals, objectives, and key initiatives. So we are capturing multiple things, and we are on the sides of the triangle, so we're getting a little bit broader. As you flip the page, you will see a matrix that directly lines up with those broad categories: academic excellence, instructional excellence, and then a culture of excellence. And we list the goal at the top, and then down on the left-hand side of the matrix, you'll see our focus, and then the objective, and then the strategies that we are undertaking to address that objective, and then the metrics. How do we measure our achievement in that particular measure? So graduation rate on page 7, for example, is the focus, and then you see there are multiple strategies that we have laid out or will lay out, and then the areas that we will, the metrics, how we will measure graduation rate. And if you'll keep turning to page 8, you'll see that we lay out the CRCT and EOCTs, our writing assessments. Page 9, being college and career ready. The objectives are there. And the strategies that we will undertake or have undertaken. And then again, the metrics. Still under academic excellence, rigorous coursework. And the objectives and strategies and metrics are there as well. And then on page 11, you'll see the shift from academic excellence to instructional excellence. And we go at each of the major areas that we've been addressing for the last 3 years and into the future with research-based and instructional strategies and building background knowledge, and the objectives, strategies, and metrics. Page 12, focus, the same thing. The Learning Focused Schools lesson planning framework, system curriculum maps, and common core syllabi, listing the objectives, strategies, and metrics. The page 13, still under instructional excellence, you'll see intra-district meetings, content professional learning, highly qualified staff, and walkthroughs. And then on page 14, student, family, community, and again, the objectives, and I see that the top is left off of that. The objectives and the strategies and the metrics to use that we would use to address and identify our progress with student, families, and community. Page 15 continues to instructional excellence, looking at the areas of focus on page 15, use of technology, the bring your own device plan, integration of technology. And page 16 begins the culture of excellence, and we begin to define PLCs. We begin to look at lesson planning, analyzing data, remediation and enrichment, and feedback, and the objectives, strategies, and metrics to address each of those areas. And so if you think about the image of the triangle, the matrix actually gives you a very, very detailed and broad look at all of the different things that are going on within the system that line right back up to the words where we list the objectives and key initiatives. And then on top, the cherry on top, is the very simplified, quick to think and recall document that we've been utilizing for the last several years. Are there any questions? I know that's a lot, and you'll need time to take a look at it and read it. And
Madam Chairman, may I, since I'm leaving, may I just enter my 2 cents? I think it's really a very strong document. If I didn't think so, I wouldn't say it. But I think it's a very well-done document, and I love the matrices by which you're going to evaluate whether these things happen. So this board can monitor, it'd be their dashboard. And I think it's really well done, and I know principals had input, and leadership team, and others as well. So I've looked at this stuff for a very long time, and I think this is a very strong strategic plan.
Thank you. All right, if there's no more questions for Ms. Fury. All right, do we have any changes to the enrollment report?
no, Madam Chair.
All right, we need to take a vote on curriculum.
Excuse me.
Sorry?
How were we going to add the NCC numbers on the enrollment report?
I think, Kathy, did we add them?
Renee sent them.
She
Yeah,
sent them
I saw
to
that.
us, but she didn't add them
To
to
the
this,
report.
the actual
Okay.
report.
We can modify the report if you'll.
She's got the numbers.
All right, we need to approve the curriculum and instructional program. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on, there's no old business, so we're moving on to new business. And we want to start with item A, which is requested board action to the, relative to the contract for superintendent. I believe we have discussed this in executive session, so therefore, do we have any motions?
I make a motion to accept the contract.
I second. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
All right, it's 4-1. We need to assign this before we leave tonight. All right. Next is where I want to have Ms. Fury come up and talk about her organizational plan. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's closer to the edge here, but it's not. Good evening again. In an effort to hit the ground running on July 1st, I present to you a proposal for an adjustment to the organizational chart that streamlines the staff that we have in the central office, that capitalizes on the fact that we're not adding anybody who is not already in the budget, but does a little bit of the reconfiguring such that, as you see laid out on the chart, that we would have a deputy superintendent of schools overseeing our directors, and a director for secondary curriculum and instruction and professional learning, and a director of elementary curriculum and instruction, which is a change in the position of the executive director for school improvement. So I've made the changes and the suggestions in the proposed chart with a keen eye on our budget, in a clear attempt not to add central office staff, but to thereby maximize the position of Deputy Superintendent for Operations and capitalize on that position and put it into a place where we need some attention in the secondary curriculum and instruction area with professional learning. Are there any questions?
I don't believe so. Did we need to approve this tonight? Was that?
Well, I'd like to post the
Post them.
positions
Post the positions.
tomorrow.
So do we need a motion to?
To approve
post
the
posting?
organizational
The two green,
Do we need to specify, we need to specify the positions because she has a proposal where one is
Right.
not necessarily needed right away. It can wait.
You want the
So
two
you want the
greens.
green.
Yes, the green, I'm sorry.
Okay, so that's Deputy Superintendent of Schools.
Yes.
And then also Director of Secondary Curriculum Instruction and Professional Learning.
Yes.
and also a revision of the current executive director to that of director.
Correct.
So it's
Elementary.
three things that they need to be.
It's absolutely three
Am I
things.
understanding it correctly?
That is absolutely correct, yes.
All right. So do we have a motion to make those changes and approve those changes
So
tonight?
moved.
Do we have a
Second.
second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right,
Thank you.
we can move forward with that. All right. All right.
George is better than that.
All right, let's see, now we'll go to our original, letter B. Requested board action relative to approval of the FY 2014 tentative budget. I think this is Ms. Buller.
Come on up, Peggy. As the board knows, we spent a couple hours, was it last week? Yes, going through the budget. And you specifically asked us to consider nurses, full-time nurses everywhere. We've got information on that. And we talked about ombudsman transportation, whether or not we might do that. And what else am I leaving out, or do I have it? Were those the two things?
Those were the two.
Those are the main things, and I think Samantha wanted to address these things.
Yes, that's
She
fine.
had
Okay.
her-
Mr. Barr will probably want to talk as well. Ms. Finley prepared this document for everyone. And what you see is a list of our schools with the nurses, articulating the visits to the clinic. And the highlighted area on the bottom is noted that there are full-time nurses there. So you'll see full-time nurses at Fairview, Flint Hill, Live Oak, Middle Ridge, South Salem, and West Newton. And so what I thought would be a great way for you to look at this would be on a daily average, how many students does the nurse see? And so the first number is the total visits for illness to the clinic by school. Of course, I did need to mention the middle and high schools have full-time nurses except for the Newton College and Career Academy. They do not. So we were focused mostly on the elementary schools and trying to maximize the nurses in the elementary schools. And so you'll see the first number is the total numbers for illness, and then how many on a daily basis does the nurse see at each of our schools. And then the yearly total for injury visits and how many, and the yearly we're looking at 160 days. We looked till April 30th and then did the division with the number 160. And then the average number of students seen per day for injuries, and then the yearly total of doses of medication, and then the average number of students seen on a daily basis for medication doses. So we thought that would help you see how the nurse's time is used throughout the day. And so, given the information that we have, and Mr. Barr and I had a conversation about the transportation piece, and when we were talking about not having the ombudsman transportation, we were not thinking that the money would be slated to pay for nurses, because I think Mr. Barr has some unique challenges in the transportation department that those savings that would be affected by eliminating transportation for those students to ombudsman would be utilized in the transportation department. So with that idea, we would propose for our nurses situation that we continue with the original proposal, which would be to have the nurse at Porterdale, who is part-time, service Newton College and Career Academy part-time. and that because of the growth of the theme school and the addition of the middle school, we would add a nurse there. And then in the coming year, we would look and pay close attention to these numbers and then have discussion throughout the year, maybe in a periodic report of how things are progressing. Given the ending fund balance in the future and the possible need for $2 million in cuts at some point, $2.5 million in cuts, I was a little concerned about perhaps adding more to the nurses, by way of nurses, to the budget. So, but we realize that you are closely paying attention to the need for more nurses, and we agree with the need for full-time nurses. We just are not sure that, given the budget, that this is the right timing, but we do need to pay attention to the things that you brought up as a board with our nurses. Mr. Barr, I don't know if you may want to talk about.
Just one of the concerns that we have from a transportation point is that that driver that would be eliminated could be used to alleviate some other issues that we have. Mainly those deal with students with disabilities and their starting times in the morning and their drop-off times in the afternoon, and we would like to work on those. I think the average starting pickup time for students with disability is 5:45, and you compare that with other students that have a pickup time of 6:35. So there's some equity issues there that we would like to address if given the opportunity by being able to hold on to that.
So, and to clarify, the board has, is this thing on? The board hasn't determined yet whether or not you're going to eliminate transportation or ombudsman. But if you did,
That's correct.
the monies he's looking at, he would propose, and I tend to agree based on the data I saw this morning from Mike, that those monies probably should be appropriated for special ed purposes because the feds naturally want to see more equity between regular and special ed transportation. So I can see where he would think those monies would need, words need to come back to his budget. I can see that. But the board's going to have to make a decision for budget purposes. Do you put a monitor on the ombudsman bus? Because we've already told you we think we've had some unsafe situations, so we're being candid with you. Maybe that would solve those problems. Maybe it wouldn't. Or do you count on the parents to take students to ombudsman if they get so adjudicated? That's a decision the board's got to make. I guess a third decision is you do nothing different, but I wouldn't advise that. I think there's liability in that. So that's a tough decision that maybe you want to make it tonight. We're asking you to approve the tentative budget tonight. But then obviously there's June 25th, when the final budget's approved. So we're all ears.
All right, do you have any
Back to the
comments?
nurses. What's the net add of nurses you're looking for?
Our recommendation would be to increase by 1 right now, to add to the theme school.
That's what's currently proposed and what we have right now.
Yes, that's in your current documents for the budget. And then when we met in our budget meeting, we began to explore the need for adding full-time nurses at all the schools, which would then require us to upsize half-time positions in order to get there.
And then the follow-up question, that
Yes.
total number is?
I want to say 4 nurses, and then if you add a full-time nurse to the College and Career Academy, it would be 5. And I think Ms. Bullard sent the figures out at one point, and I want to say it was.
I have it.
You have it, okay.
To add a nurse at every school, exclusive of ombudsman, would be $146,000 in salary and benefits.
Right.
To do that for all schools and ombudsman would be $182,500.
And just looking at here, and I think during the budget meeting last week, I noticed some of the figures, and it's not on here necessarily.
Which one is that?
What y'all had sent to me, it's here, I think. Sorry, I've got lots of notes. It was who was sharing, which schools were sharing.
Yeah.
And based on the population of that school, a lot of them didn't make sense when you had a full-time nurse at, say, one that had, and I'm just pulling numbers out of the air,
Okay.
400, whereas you had a school, say, like Rocky Plains, where you had 900, but you only had a nurse there for half a day.
Right.
I think we discussed trying to make it more equitable, for that, and even looking at these numbers here, these average numbers, I think some of these that have only part-time nurses definitely need a full-time, whereas some of the ones that have full-time nurses may not need the full-time nurse, so.
The schools that have full-time nurses have special programming in them that have the very fragile children in them. So
Okay.
that's why you've got the full-time nurses at those particular schools.
There's a series of fragility that I've seen.
There
It's a number
is,
of things.
yes. And so you've got, I asked the same question, Ms. Cohen. And that's what it is the number or the types of students that are found and housed at the different schools with the full-time nurses.
Ms. Fury, to
Yes.
add on to that for simplicity, we have a school assigned, say if a kid got a disease, whatever that means, and you got one on that side of town, and that other town, and that nurse is proficient in that disease, that kid go over there as a home-based school.
Yes.
That's some of the inequities, that's what you're seeing.
So what
Because
you're.
you can't service a student with a specific illness every time with a nurse.
Right,
So that-
right.
We've got specialized programs that.
Right, at each of the schools.
Yes,
I mean,
at different
certain
schools. Yes.
You know, my fear with this is just threatening of lawsuit and things if something happens. It seems like every other day I'm getting a message from a parent about a complaint that there's not a nurse there, and then the staff are not able to provide the adequate care. So that's my fear, you know, that we need, you know, it's something we definitely need to do, but I understand money's a factor, so.
But I think it would be perfect for us to perhaps generate a report for you in the future, maybe quarterly, that you could look at, and we could just pay very close attention to it. And as money, as the information regarding our budget evolves during the coming school year, we probably can make some decisions then. And maybe prioritize if there's only $40,000 looking at the schools that have historically had high incidences and only have part-time nurses. So we could sort of add them in that way. I mean, if we get a windfall, maybe we can add them all at one time. But I think this look is probably a great way to identify where the needs are very clearly. And I'm happy to do that.
Can I add something? I actually like the report idea because, I mean, just taking in factor, it may be some illnesses or some special situations where a nurse is needed, but a nurse, ironically, may not be able to do the job. Just use my child as an example. The nurse, my child has issues with her knees, and every time her knee has popped out of place, it has not been a nurse that popped it into place. It has been a teacher or the principal. So I think a lot of times we think that, you know, we need nurse for certain situations, but sometimes it's not the nurse that does it. So I like the report idea, and that way we can see how the nurse is actually being utilized versus just putting one there.
Is the nursing budget funded separately? The state support this in portion separately, the nurse?
I'm not sure if they.
It used to be a separate line on the allotment sheet, but they've changed it and it's incorporated into the different programs, kindergarten, first.
So it's a mandate without funding, right?
Correct, pretty much, it always has been. I mean, we did get some money, but it was never enough to cover.
Well, I think if the state view it as a lowering of priority, I think we ought to accommodate that as well. We got nurses there, and I have to use my experiences, and we've come a long way, not knocking it. But I happened to come through and didn't have a doctor, you know, so I want to put that in perspective. And I know they're important, don't get me wrong. So, in my suggestion, we got 3 items: the nurses, the ombudsman, and maybe a monitor.
Yeah,
So
if you choose to go
I want to make a motion that we postpone any addition of nurses at this time so that we clear the budget.
All right, do we have a second? No second? All right, the motion fails. Any other questions, discussion, motions on the table?
I have,
Comment,
Yes, sir.
question. We have some issues here that I think that's very important that we need to really take a strong look at. Mr. Barr mentioned that there's some deficiencies in our modes of transportation for the handicap. which is very important. And in my understanding, even if we eliminated transportation for the ombudsman, that would only be $113,000. Okay, having said that, keep that number in mind with the special needs children. Looking at the ombudsman, several things I think we need to look at. Number one is how many of these students are repeating infractions while they're at ombudsman, number one. And number two, what penalties are we giving them who are repeaters? They should automatically be knocked off and not allowed to ride. Having said that, if we are sincere about all our children being successful, then I think we need to look at those who may not have a mode of transportation that we're gonna leave behind. So I don't know those answers to those questions, but I think it would be important for us to look at that. And if some way that we can determine how many kids actually went to ombudsman and they turned themselves around and actually graduated. So if that happened, we were successful. So I think it's some important issues that we really need to look at. And Mr. Barr, with the special needs children, I think, if possible, if we can find some funds somewhere to go ahead and address that, because we're talking about kids with special needs having to get up an hour and a half or 2 hours before regular ed. That's not being very sensitive to their needs. That's my opinion. But in the same sense, in addressing the needs of the students who are put in ombudsman, to make sure they're successful too, because we all have been children at one point in time or another, and we've all made mistakes. Unfortunately, some of them will repeat a mistake. Those should be not allowed to ride the bus again. Matter of fact, they should be out. That's an alternative school. And if they repeat an offense, then they should not be able to attend. That's just my personal opinion.
They are, I think they indeed are being dealt with in that fashion, especially the bus violators are not going back on the bus. What we've seen, to our dismay, is week after week of serious infractions, having to call on law enforcement, in fact, to intercede. And after a point, you have to decide that something's got to happen with that transportation. Either there's got to be more adults on that bus to help prevent that kind of manifestation, or you've got to do like some other Georgia school systems and incent students, lacking a better term, to provide their own way to an alternative school if they're going to get the education, and incent their parents and guardians to do the same in order to get their kids there. There's some notion that that works. So, I mean, I'm not here to suggest the decision unless you ask me to, but you are going to have to decide, and I don't think you can leave it as is, meaning we'll just disenfranchise all the students who misbehave on the bus, which we will continue to do, but that doesn't seem to stop the problem.
Right.
That's the problem.
Dr. Matthews, let me ask you this. If it's 113,000 and we're talking 43 students, and as we discussed last Thursday at the budget hearing, that's $2,628 a year for each of those students on ombudsman buses, which I would argue probably, and I don't have the figures, is inequitable to the other students. I mean, these students have transportation at their disposal from the bus stop to their normal school. They made the choice that the regular school is not where they belong, at least for some term. I think that's a lot of money to be putting in an ombudsman bus when we've paid, 2 years? And most Georgia systems with ombudsman don't do that even the first year, but very few beyond the first year.
Right, that's correct.
I actually think originally when we looked at the contract and we talked about going with ombudsman, and we went to Douglas County to visit, which they
Right.
don't pay for transportation.
Right.
When we sat down and talked with Phyllis Lucia, is that correct?
That's correct.
We talked about the transportation, and maybe because it was gonna be the first time going with ombudsman, and there may be just kind of some sticky situations that we would provide
Right.
transportation for the first year. being that it was a spur of the moment kind of thing, choice we were making and stuff. But we talked about only that first year only, however, transportation continued. But when I look at the routes that Mr. Barr sent, and this is where I don't see equity in it, and I understand, Alma, your argument, I understand that clearly, and Jeff, I understand yours as well. But for me, when I look at it and I see 9 routes with 2 or less students, 9, just based on this number, that has 1 or 2 students on there, for me, when we're talking about money, even if it's not a lot of money, that's not fiscally savvy for me.
Well, my issue on the driving, step one, I think for the special ed, those long trips, we can put another bus driver on those trips in the morning and reduce that time frame, where that's what we can do. Just because we got a kid, we've got to pick up at 5:30 in the morning, and that bus driver may have to go to somebody else, pick them up. Well, maybe we just have to put one kid on that bus and get them there at school time. There are other means to reduce those time frames and on-arrival time by adding some additional bus drivers. That's one for that. The second issue on Busman, as Mr. Turner alluded, what are the accomplishments? And I went to, and I encourage all of our board members to attend some of the events at Ombudsman. And I attended the graduation this week at it. And the smiles on those kids that finished at Ombudsman were no less brighter than those finished our high schools. I encourage you to go to some of the activities and find out the job that's being done. And to me personally, to sit here and discuss terminating transportation for public school students is an insult. And it's just, as far as I'm concerned, it's a lack of concern. We should not put a dollar value on travel or bus transportation for our kids. I don't want to participate in educational assassination. I will not do it. I will go to whatever lengths possible to get those kids to school like we do for public transportation, as in any other student special ed. Cost should not be a determining factor. Thank you.
I have a question, Madam Chair, may I? For Mr. Barr, just looking at both sides of the argument, looking at both sides. I'm just trying to find a happy medium, because like I said, I see Mr. Turner's point of view, and I see Jeff's point of view, and then I look at it and I see nine routes for 1 or 2 students. And so I'm just wondering if there is a way that we can combine either some of the routes, like have you looked at combining some of the routes or taking some of the routes away, like just specifying times, like due to the amount that, due to the fact that we only have 1 student at this time, we are encouraging you to go to ombudsman session at this time instead, where the route is fuller. Like, have you looked at that, or?
Those are all valid options, Ms. Baker.
Well,
Which
let me ask
would
you,
be
let me ask you
eliminating
this.
the 1 or 2 students, but then still providing transportation.
That's discriminatory, I'm sorry.
In essence, are you saying something like
I'm
a
trying
zero
to find a
tolerance
happy
policy on the bus?
medium,
Or
Eddie.
Well, that's one of the topics we've discussed, but what I think what she's trying to say is that, instead of, you've got one student attending in the afternoon session, and then you've got another student that's being picked up at the same bus stop in the morning session, why can't we make those 2 students go at the same time so that we're not duplicating the route that out?
I might be able to answer that question. The ombudsman sessions are full,
Okay.
and so there were not enough places to make those kinds of moves. One session fills, and then you start filling another session, so.
And bring something to the attention of the other board members. If you remember when we went to Douglas County to discuss and look at what they did and how they did it, one thing that they had to our advantage that we don't have luxury of, their ombudsman was located in the shopping center, which a lot of the kids were able to get jobs afterward and go and get their jobs, which allowed the parents who worked, when they got off work, to pick their children up. That's what we initially thought was gonna happen here, which we would not have provided transportation. However, that's where the glitch came in, where we had to relocate,
Right.
which made that virtually impossible for us to accommodate these routes because they were not in a shopping center. So that's one of the things that came up that kind of made us regroup and think the way we're thinking now. Now, if they had been located in the shopping center like our original plan was, I wouldn't have had a problem with it because a lot of kids were getting jobs after school and working.
33. And then, so ultimately, there's just 3 drop-off and pickup locations?
That's correct.
Okay.
Can we change the pickup location then? Combine those? Still at that scheduled time? We would still be providing transportation, but you may have to travel a little bit further
Further.
to drop your
To drop
child
your
off.
child. I mean, they do that ultimately at the theme school, you've only got 2. So is there a way to provide that where we limit that, and will that be?
To reduce cost.
And then it will take away that 1 or 2 students being on one
One
bus.
bus, and then you could put that driver towards your special ed students that you said that there's a need for?
We will put a bus wherever directed to do so. I assume you're talking about Jack Neely, maintaining Jack Neely? Is that where?
I think you've got Denny Dobbs, Jack Neely, and Alcovey.
Right.
Yeah, and so like, say for example, that first session, the 8 a.m., you have Denny Dobbs has 1 person at 7:20, and Jack Neely has 8 at 7:45. So couldn't that one person, and Denny Dobbs and Jack Neely are not that far apart. You know, couldn't that one person, what we're basically saying is make it 1 drop off at Jack Neely. So the person from Denny Dobbs would have to drive over there. So then instead of having a bus with 1 student, you have
With all of them.
all of them, 9 students on the bus, which would be more cost effective.
See, that scenario would change when the student completes his or her tour. You got a different set of scenarios.
It's gonna change.
Yeah.
Because the kids go in and out.
They
What's the
come and go.
average stay at Ombudsman?
Well, pick 1 drop off, whether
It
it's
was
hard to
9
take.
weeks. Some
I really
cases. 9
don't
weeks to a
see, I've only seen 2 solutions, and I've stated those from the beginning, whichever one the board chooses. What I don't, sure is, you have every option, but what I don't think is a realistic option is to let transportation for ombudsman continue as it is now. It has become a precarious venture. So you either have got to cease and desist with the transportation, like many Georgia districts, philosophically believing that that gives them more incentive to be there and to work hard, or put a monitor on the bus. I have not been able to think of another solution to that.
What is the cost for a monitor? What's the additional cost?
16, 20,000.
20.
And we need 1 for every one of these buses? So you're looking
How many
at-
buses are there, Mike?
2.
It's just 1 that we're.
Right,
looking
that's
at,
what I thought.
But it's an
It-
8-hour employee.
Is there a bus that has more problems than the other?
Well, Jack Neely is where we have most of the problem, but that's where most of the students ride. so.
Mr. Bart, do you have a firm, and I use this word without having another one, an aggressive bus driver
We do.
who can discipline and is very aggressive in maintaining bus behavior? By experience, if you don't have that, then we will create problems.
Right.
So you gotta be very selective in the person
And
that's
that,
handling
and
it.
that bus driver has worked very closely with Ms. Finley and myself and Mr. Luna, the transportation coordinator, and we are at the bus stop quite frequently working with them.
My concern is we have the person that Mr. Johnson describes, and we still have, week
Still
after
have the
week.
sheriff coming.
Yeah, right.
How many?
now.
How many, what time do they actually pick up?
It begins at 7:20. That's when we begin, that's at Denny Dobbs, 7:45 at Jack.
Well, let me ask you this. Since this is a unique school that's different from our regular schools, and we have resource officers, has there been any talk or considerations about allowing the resource officer to periodically ride these buses?
We have not had that discussion.
I don't know what it would mean logistically.
I mean, I'm just thinking
Yeah.
about, thinking of different options.
My guess is when the resource officer would not ride the bus, that's when you'd have accentuated issues. They would deliberately figure that out.
Go back to what I said about the aggressive bus driver. Speaking from real live experience, I drove for Sharp for 2.5 years. Never had a problem. Never. Because I would handle it, and the principal worked with me very closely. Get on the bus, put the students in the seat, principal's there to make sure they're signed. I had my telephone, he had his, I would call him, and I had some authority that other buses didn't do. I could tell this student that afternoon, you won't be able to catch the bus tomorrow morning, and I wouldn't pick him up because I had this principal's permission. That worked very well. Now,
Yeah.
is that applicable here? I don't know, but there's some extenuating things that we can be done, but it takes patience.
Right.
You know,
But I
But,
can't-
all is said and done, I'm through with it, but I say, regardless of what we do, however you motion this, I am not for taking transportation away from the student. I am for adding a monitor to help for the safety requirements, period. Now, how we put that in a motion, up or down, so be it. Madam Chairman?
Will we be, Madam Chairman, can I ask a question? I'm sorry. Will we be adding a monitor to every bus? Because I just don't
That's what I was
see
thinking.
adding a monitor to a bus that has one student. I'm sorry, I still go back to that one or two students. That's just unreal.
How many buses, I think that's where we've got need some clarity. Is it one bus that goes to
It's one
and picks
bus.
up at Jack or Dee Dobbs and then goes to Jack Neely, then comes, okay, and then
Yes.
what about the one that goes to Alcovey? Is it the same bus?
just drives.
It just
Same
drives around in a
bus, that's
circle,
what I'm
so we're
saying.
one bus,
One bus, one
and
driver.
it's costing $113,000
It's probably
basically a year.
it's probably a little more than that, because I don't think we included benefits in it, but it's
Mhm.
in excess
And
of
then once
that.
gas continuously change.
Well, then you add monitors
Well,
and your
that's why
cost
I
goes
think,
up.
I wouldn't mind seeing a different drop-off locations if we have to. I mean, reducing those drop-off locations, just so we don't have a bus that's going all around. I don't know how to work it. That's your job, Mike, sorry. But, I do think that that's something we do need to look at, is reducing those. But I do
Reduce
get
it by
your,
one, right?
you have a very valid point about offering, providing transportation.
Well, Madam Chair, let's get this over with. Ask for a motion or something. I made one, you make another one. I mean, we're beating a dead horse. I mean, if board members need to step up and say, I am for or against something. I'm planning, I think, I don't know, let's do this. We'll be here all night.
Well, you gotta ask
Yeah, we
questions.
got
This is
that.
our
I think-
first time being able to ask questions.
Yeah, because I have another question.
We're talking
What-
one bus, we got 178.
But what is the
Well, that's the
total?
point. On some of them, they have
Right.
that's their point, is that
Right.
we've got one bus that's
What-
costing $113,000.
What is the total time for that one bus to do their route?
He's employed for 8 hours a day.
Okay. If you had two buses, would that reduce the cost? Because they would not have to ride as far? I'm just throwing this out.
We've tried multiple scenarios with it, and this one is the one that's worked the best. Having a single point of contact on the bus, somebody that we're dealing with consistently. So far, that's worked the best for us.
It's just that it's not working.
And now my next question, what's the total enrollment? Number one,
Yeah, that's somewhere.
I think it's like just about 200 students.
200 students.
Yes, sir.
And my next question, what's the total number who prefer riding the bus?
I believe around 43,
43,
yes.
okay.
So the remainder are getting there a different way.
Right. There are
Most of the
100
students are not.
There are
taking-
195 on today's enrollment
Okay.
report, so 150,
You're looking at
52 are
4
getting there on their own.
We're only providing.
Just for the sake of
transportation.
clarification, we do provide transportation to those students with IEPs.
Yes.
Right.
And I think that's roughly 30.
Okay.
Now, the ones that are getting there on their own, were they doing the same when they was in a regular school?
That's
I do
hard
not
to
know
know.
that.
All right. Mr. Johnson has made a point about we could be here all night debating this, trying to solve it. And again, I don't claim to know how to solve this. This is where we turn to our staff. So we need a motion tonight to approve the tentative budget as it was presented by Ms. Bullard. And that would include only one new nurse.
Yes.
For, yes, one new nurse. And then it would provide for transportation for ombudsman currently as it is with no monitor.
Correct.
Correct.
That's
Okay.
correct.
So do we have a motion?
Well, I'm not recommending no monitor. In fact, rather than status quo, I would recommend a monitor. I just don't think we can continue week after week with the sheriff having intervening on
Right.
ombudsman transportation. I think it makes us not as responsible as we need to be. So the board may see it differently. All I'm suggesting, Madam Chair, is that's not my recommendation. My recommendation, at the very least of things, is a monitor for the ombudsman bus, one monitor.
We have until June.
Exactly.
June 25th. You can
We have
wait.
until June
And then-
25th, right?
Well, we do need to approve, and it says tentative, and that's what they'll say in the
Yeah.
paper.
Right.
And you can change it, and you can change it July 1,
Yeah.
July 2, whenever.
I just
So,
wanna make
Madam
sure
Chair-
It's
Chair.
substantially right.
Yes.
Madam Chair, if
I'm not
if
even-
that may be in order,
Yes.
Yes.
Transportation.
I would like
I
a
thought that was-
motion to accept as presented, with the understanding that we have now until June 25th to revisit some of these options, and at some time between there, then we can do a final adjustment, leave as is, or move. That's my motion.
I like that motion. I
Second. Aye.
All right.
Let's move on.
I think that's a very good idea. And all in favor of?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, well, y'all work on that with the transportation, different options I know you have, and the cost and
Yep,
the
we'll
monitors
be
and
happy
such.
to.
Got time. Yeah.
All right, moving on. We, our letter C is relative to renewal of contract for uniforms and school nutrition program. This is Ms. Lumens. No changes, and I believe you've got all the way down to letter J. Are there any changes at all?
No.
For any of those, all right? Board members, I would like to just vote for all of those, unless there are any questions, in one motion, unless you have any questions or concerns. So that would be letters C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J.
I make a motion that we approve items C through J.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, those pass. All right, Mr. Barr, you're back up. Relative to surplus items, any changes?
No, ma'am, no changes.
All right, do we have a motion to approve item K?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, those opposed? And K passes. All right, Ms. Fury, I believe you've got L, M, and N.
L, there are no changes, M, there are no changes, and N is a new item.
New item, okay.
And Dr. Thomas is here to present that item.
Dr. Thomas, before you
Yes.
present, why don't we go ahead and vote on items L and M?
Okay.
Since there are no changes to that, do we have a motion for items L and M?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, those opposed, no, so those pass. Dr. Thomas.
Okay. Good evening. The superintendent recommends the purchase of Brain Pop subscription for 18 school-wide Title I schools totaling $26,788. Brain Pop is an online program that creates animated, curriculum-based content to support educators and encourage students. Brain Pop can be used at school or at home. This is a resource that includes movies, quizzes, timelines, activities, and it covers many topics that includes math, science, social studies, English, technology, arts, music, and health. And all of the content is aligned to the standards, and it can be researched by the standards. And in the past 4 years that I've been the Director of Federal Programs, we have always purchased Brain Pop, and all of our Title I schools and principals and teachers, they absolutely love the use of Brain Pop. And so they would like to see that we continue with the subscription of Brain Pop.
And if they told us differently, we wouldn't recommend that, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I did that for Mr. Johnson, just I told him.
Well, I thank you for thinking about Mr. Johnson.
All right.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I'm familiar with this program, and I think it's outstanding threefold. And as far as I'm concerned, I know if it's not required to wait, we can punch this one out tonight.
Yeah, it's up for a vote for tonight, so I'll take that as your motion to approve.
Thank you.
All right, and we have a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Is opposed? No, so that we move on. Mr. Shaddix, you have O, P, and Q.
Good evening. Dr. Matthews, Madam Chairwoman, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Item O is for the renewal of the contract for antivirus software. There are no additional changes or additions to that one.
All right. What about P and Q? Are there any
I
changes?
just wanted to go one at a time, see if there's
Okay.
any questions. I have cataracts, so I've got to look at this closer.
Now you got paper this time. Last time you had the computer, so when you going back?
Mr. Barr can come up and help.
I forgot my tablet tonight, and that's the reason I don't have it. I would have used my tablet. Item P is the renewal of the contract for Microsoft licenses,
Okay.
and there's no additions to that one.
All right. Any questions? All right, moving on.
Not on software.
On Q.
Item Q is a new item, and we may want to vote on the first two first.
Okay, let's do that. Let's vote on O and P then. How about that? Since
Move that
we're
we
recording for
approve items O and P.
the- Second.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, those opposed?
That's what happens when you present a
All right,
race to the
now-
top of the table.
Well, if I'd known that, Mr. Metters, I would have not found his PowerPoint.
All right, item Q.
Item Q is a new item. In April, I presented to the board that we had the X number of classrooms per school for the ViewPath implementation. And since then, I have found that my estimations were wrong. And so after doing a thorough analysis of the number of classrooms, letting the principals choose the number in collaboration with the technology department staff, we have determined there's 33 extra classrooms that would require ViewPath if we put ViewPath in every single classroom that had students and teachers next year. Now, I know how the board likes options to choose from, and so I have several options for you to consider tonight.
That's my word.
I was thinking of you, Ms. Manning. The first option, I think this is the one that we cannot choose, is to leave the numbers as they are and not make any changes to them as the numbers that were approved last month. And the reason I say that is because in those estimates I made last month, some schools would get more than they need and some schools would get less. So we've got to make an adjustment to the schools one way or the other. The second option, but that isn't a viable option. I don't think I wouldn't recommend it. Option 2 is to reduce the number of classrooms that we put ViewPath in by 4 classrooms per school. These are the 5 middle schools and the 3 high schools, excluding Newton, which already has their systems being installed as we speak. With the exception of Eastside, reduce their numbers by 5 because they're getting the most additional ones from the original estimates. So that would reduce the number of ViewPath systems by 33, which is the number we would have to add. So that is one option to consider, and that would not impact the budget. Option 3 is to add the 33 rooms, and that would add $107,910 to the capital projects budget. I've talked to Ms. Bullard, and she's not in favor of this option. I want to be honest with you. She doesn't want to spend that additional funds. At some point, those classrooms would have to be done, but we could wait until Splosh 2 or Splosh 4, I think it is, to add that, and that would be January of 2015, before they were added. Now, I've talked to Dr. Matthews about this, and we both would agree that the reduction would not be in the core content areas. It would not be in math, science, social studies, or English language arts, but it would be in some of the other programs, either special ed or the non-core content areas. And those are actually the only options I have that I could think of that the board could consider.
One suggestion.
Yes, sir.
I'm not in favor of the $107,000 also, but if we utilize that in the high school and middle school and pick on the elementary schools, where this may not be as, from a classroom standpoint and a behavior standpoint, as important, that's my rationale, and at a later date do the elementary school.
The elementary schools was not part of the phase 1 of the implementation. They were going to be delayed for Splosh 4 just because we did not have the money out of Splosh 3 to do this. So they were never considered as part of phase 1.
Oh, okay.
All right, any other questions?
If I may, Madam Chairwoman, because the implementation needs to move forward because we want to have them installed when school starts in the fall, a vote would need to be taken tonight on
Okay.
this.
All right.
I would like to make a motion of going option number 2, where you reduce the number of classrooms by 4 with the exception of Eastside by 5.
And not in the core content areas.
Right, not in, I'll add that to my motion, not in
Second.
core content areas.
All right, we have a second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
All right, now, item R, Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the board. I recommend that you approve my recommendations in executive session this evening, and if you do so, I do have an announcement following your vote.
All right. Do we have a motion for item R?
So moved. Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and board members. With the vote of the board tonight, it's my honor and privilege to recognize a member of our audience actually this evening, and that's Dr. Sandy Owens. Dr. Owens, as you know, is currently the assistant principal at Newton High School. And with the board's action tonight, she becomes the new principal at Alcovy High School. A little bit about Ms. Owens. She does hold a doctorate in teacher leadership from Walden University, EDS in mathematics education from the University of Georgia, an MSA in human resource management from Central Michigan, and a BBA in accounting from the University of Central Arkansas. She did receive an Ed Leadership Certificate, if I'm reading this correctly, at the University of Georgia. She's been a school administrator for the last 7 years, and she has a passion, I believe, for this principalship and for the school with its excellent educators and for the progress they've made and for the progress they desperately still need to make. And I believe that Dr. Owens will put Alcovy on a very good path, continuing even greater achievement, and certainly with the organizational and skills that she possesses and the help that Alcovy will provide her and she them, they're going to do great. So congratulations, Dr. Owens. Very proud of you.
All right, other matters of interest? Excuse me, we've got graduation this weekend at Springfield. May 24th, 8 o'clock, Newton High. May 25th, 9 a.m. is Eastside and 3 p.m. is Alcovy. Do we need to get there any earlier?
Do we have passes for Alcovy?
They're asking about passes and all that stuff.
I have them for East Side.
We have Eastside, we don't have Alcovy.
passes, we will get Alcovy and Newton. We'll have your
All right, but do we need to be there sitting around earlier? It may be in there, I haven't had a chance to look.
about an hour ahead of time. They should have, you'll have designated spot, parking, which is on the side of the building there.
Kind of like last time when we were there?
And they'll know, if you put your little tag in the windshield, they'll know where you are to park, direct you there, and then about an hour, 15 minutes beforehand. And there's a hospitality room.
All right, so everybody know? All right, any other matters of interest?
Yes, I just want everybody to have a very safe summer, as we are winding down. Couple of days left, 2 days left. So everybody have a great
You work.
summer. Oh, yeah, you guys work, but everybody else via video or however they're gonna watch it, YouTube, have a great summer. And I can't wait to hear the scholarship count at the graduations. I always look forward to that, the total numbers from each school, so I'm excited about that, so.
Anybody else?
I want to apologize to Sandy Owen that you're not going to ever get to go into the new building.
I know.
But I'm very happy that you're
It
going
was
to
all
another
planned.
building.
Believe me.
One more thing, going on with board members. I just want to repeat one more time the congratulatory note to our staff for working on the graduation rate. 12% improvement for our school system is
Huge.
really quite huge, and I've seen several people today, and they wanted us to really celebrate that. So this is the second time I've mentioned it tonight, so there you go.
That is great, and it takes a lot, just for those teachers that receive the awards or the grants from Reimagine Newton today. We can't thank them enough, the teachers out there who go over and beyond their daily duties of what's required to do this, because this is what shows. So, thank you.
And I'd like to ditto what they're saying about our administrators and our teachers, but also I would like to give thanks and sincere gratitude to our students who have put forth their best effort to be the best that they can be. So I'd just like to say thanks to them.
And my comment is, I want to say thanks to the forgotten. Those are the bus drivers. They're the most important people early in the morning that exist. And we play them very cheap in the role that they play. They don't get all the accolades, and they don't get any recognition until we terminate them. So I'm for the bus drivers. Congratulations to our bus drivers.
Thank you. All right, do we have a motion to
So moved.
dismiss? Second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.